Subscribe to Film Companion for your film fix. Hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.
When Ranbir is acting, you don't know whether he's acting well. It doesn't really impress you because he's just there. He's just doing it. It looks just like water, organic, right? Thank you for reintroducing all my films to Anupama. She uh, likes them when you reintroduce them, not when I introduce them.
Hey Rahul, wonderful to be back with you on FC Retake, and I should tell our viewers that this is a sort of reworked or a newish version of FC Retake, because first Rahul and I are going to chat about Rockstar, but after that Imtiaz Ali is going to join us, and then we're going to throw a bunch of questions at him. So please stay on. Rahul, tell me what you thought of the film.
I have seen, I read a lot more into the film over the years. It's become fashionable to hate on the film now, especially because for me, it was one of the first films in a movement of sort of what a lot of people call toxic masculinity. I think this was the film that sort of brought it into the spotlight. And for me, it's the sort of film that did it correctly. I mean, the jury is out on the form and how people received how it was made. But for me, it was the beginning of that thing. And, for me, it started the discussion on a gaze a lot of people like me weren't even aware about. And, craft aside, music aside, Ranbir himself aside, I think there's more to the film than the eye lets on, because a lot of people forget that, films like Tamasha and films like Kabir Singh came much later down the line. And
Sure.
At some point, for me, there's an origin story to a particular kind of genre of filmmaking. And for me, Rockstar was that film. That's why it sort of stayed in my mind more than Tamasha, or more than a lot of films I liked down the years.
I'll tell you, I was frustrated with it then, and I was frustrated with it now. But what I really, really sort of once again admired was what Ranbir brought to it. I mean, his performance is so complex and so note perfect that I think he really, him and Rahman's music are of course the two absolute highlights. I think the gender difference is because I think that again it's this whole idea, and while the idea that what Khatana says कि टूटे हुए दिल से ही संगीत निकलता है, it's fine, but the idea that she exists solely to make him a better artist is also very similar to Tara and Ved in Tamasha, and Tara sort of helping him to realize his full potential. But I think Deepika Padukone is such a fine actor that she brought so much to that role which didn't have enough flesh, and Nargis Fakhri isn't able to kind of pull off that same complexity in a very threadbare role. I mean, what do we know about Heer apart from the fact that she likes to see Jangli Jawani and likes to break a few rules? And for me, that lopsidedness, forget about the toxic masculinity or the fact that he's sort of he's really abrasive in his first approach of her. But it's just, her character is just so flimsy that it can't carry a love story of this level of depth and sentiment that, he becomes this great tortured artist because of her. For me, that is the fatal flaw in the film.
Yeah. That was obviously instant impression, because her performance, obviously, as with most Ranbir Kapoor films, it becomes a little too obvious, in a film when a lesser performance is part of the film. And obviously the biggest controversy about the film over the years is Nargis Fakhri and her role and why she was the actress chosen. And, there's obviously no justification for that. It's probably a mistake on part of the director. It's probably, one of those things that is very obviously a flaw of the film. But, for me, the fact that the title itself is sort of, the deceit that, presents the beauty of the film. Because, from obviously there is that whole thing of an artist looking to make art, by going through heartbreak. But, for me, he went from that person at the beginning of the film in college who was, looking to fall in love and have a heartbreak so that he could make great art, because Katana Bhai told him that's the way great artists do it. And inadvertently he became, like, without knowing it, he became sort of a person who was actually ended up using music and his art to sort of get closer to his love and heartbreak. Because for me, by the end of the film, or by the second half of the film, which so many people talk about, I think by then it became very obvious that Jordan was sort of, I mean, he wasn't actually looking to, you know, as he started out as a particular person, but when he became this person, his music became very obviously an excuse. If you notice, that's why Ranbir Kapoor's performance is so complex, because, and I think he pulled off a very difficult character arc, because, you know, you're supposed to see a person who is a musician who starts off, and he midway through the film loses interest in the music, in the journey itself, and gets absolutely possessed by the idea of love, by the idea of pain. And for me, obviously, here was that supposed to represent that idea. You know, it was a very idealistic way of looking. Okay, here's an angel. You know, she doesn't need to act well. She doesn't need to speak a lot, but she's the idea that Jordan has in his mind. That's the way a lot of Rockstar fans
so
justify
beautiful.
it. Yeah, she's so beautiful. So she, for him, and I think Tamasha for me was sort of an improvement on that, you know, where the concept of love became love itself by Tamasha, because by then the girl actually mattered, the partner actually mattered. In Rockstar, the partner doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that it's here. It's just, the only thing is that, you know, Jordan is just possessed by a particular idea, and he's possessed by an addiction to pain, and to play a musician who is making great music without knowing it is it's, you know, almost an impossible feat. And I think Ranbir, you know, combined with the editing, combined with Rahman's music, I think that was probably the biggest takeaway of Rockstar, and that defines the film, you know, for me.
Totally. No, it's worth going back to again and again just to study how he found the beats of this character. But I was still very confused about how this, you know, this artist who's sort of all about love then becomes this kind of, you know, rebel rock star with Sadda Haq. You know, I don't think those things were those transitions were smooth enough, and it just seemed like tossed in there because it felt like that's the kind of cool thing to do.
Yeah, for me, actually, the second half, which obviously even you have a problem with, and a lot of people do, and, you know, rightfully so. But for me, the second half worked far more than the first half. You know, if you look at it, the second half is technically, the entire second half is a montage. It's just a bunch of songs, and we see Jordan's journey through those songs, and him sort of getting caught in this whirlpool of sort of longing and pain and you know, love. And so for me, that part especially worked, because the Rockstar part itself goes from, for me, it goes from the foreground in the beginning of the film, where his ambition is to be a rock star, to the background by the time we reach the second half of the film, where his music actually becomes a liability to him. All it is for him is a way to get closer to her, because if you notice, he signs the contract to go to Prague only because he remembers that he is going to be in Prague. Once he finds out in the middle of an interview with the journalist that there's a particular initiative that will take him to Prague, he leaves the interview midway. Even in Prague itself, if you notice, he's constantly distracted on stage. His music is just flowing out of him, because that is the cliche of how artists use pain to make art, and that's the cliche that's coming out of him. But what I think the intention at that point in the film, through the editing, through the filmmaking, was to present a man who was basically absolutely sort of possessed by the idea of what he is pursuing. And I love the fact that even though the music was absolutely phenomenal, it really does not matter to him in any way, because all the songs from the beginning to the end are all montages, if you notice. And I also, like, a lot of people say that the editing pattern cannot have been planned, and I agree to that. You know, it can't have been. It's a very complex way of sort of selling a narrative, because you start with Jo Bhi Main, which sort of shows us the highlights of the whole film before coming back to Delhi, before starting off with his journey. Same with Fir Se Ud Chala, same with a lot of other songs. And in all these songs, if you notice, we see different parts of his journey. And for me, over the years, I've thought about it. I felt like the editing of these songs was basically sort of a metaphor, symbolism for how the journalist is sort of actually constructing the story throughout the film. Because if you notice, the journalist is talking to Katana Bai and trying to sort of piece together a story of the man behind the artist.
Yeah.
And all the songs that are presented in montages, we see the exact highlights, we see the exact headlines that viewers or that readers would normally see of a musician or of a controversial rock star. It's basically what the world wants to see, they see in these songs. And we don't, if you notice, we don't see even one shot of heel throughout any of these songs. In the ending credits, we finally see the whole film's language coming full circle, because till now we are not even seeing one shot of heel, and that entire closing credit montage has only shots of them and their little moments together. And this is basically what the film was basically hinting at throughout, through its craft, throughout its sort of sort of teasing the viewer with, this is what you see, but now this is the pain between the songs that a lot of people don't see, but only you are seeing towards the end of the film. So I thought there was a circularity to the visual language, to the editing. The editing was the first thing that instantly got me hooked to the film right from the first song, and I thought it really worked for me once I found a reason behind it.
I also love that in the middle of all of this, he managed to put in a sort of dark humor in the character of Dhingra, Piyush Mishra's character, and there's that lovely scene where he's being sort of massaged or malish type kuch ho raha hai, and he's being lifted up and down, and Jordan is like, he's explaining how aaj sangeet koi nahi kharidta, sab brand ya something like that, sab brand kharidte, image is everything and brand kharidte. And it's amazing how true and how much that spoke to the film industry, to the music industry, to the actual reality on the streets of Mumbai. That's it, that's it. Those are the people controlling artists. Those are the people, and that lovely moment where the Shammi Kapoor character says, "Ye bada janwar hai."
Yeah, that was a lovely moment. In fact, that was my favorite moment of the film. Because it's sort of the quiet in between the noise, and suddenly everything dies down, because this is actually a screen legend playing a legend, talking about someone in his family, and it rang very true. But even coming back to your point about how you weren't really convinced by this guy suddenly becoming the symbol of rebelliousness, of being a rebel and being a rock star. I mean, even in Sadda Haq, which was arguably the most popular song there, there are a lot of symbols. There's the Free Tibet movement. There's a bunch of things that he becomes political in those songs. He's standing for movements. He's standing against the system for the people. But if you look at Rockstar in general, if you look at the story of the film and Ranbir's performance, this is actually a play on how a lot of artists tend to sort of fetishize a particular movement or a particular image, like Dhingra says, and goes on, because I don't think Jordan actually cares about what he's standing for by then.
Right.
He's angry. He is lashing out against the system. The cops have arrested him twice, and he is just taking the first sort of sign that he gets to lash out against the system. And a lot of people, a lot of blinded fans, and that is how music works. That's how art works. We try to find deeper meaning within them. We try to look at them in a way that, okay, they are with us. They are standing for us. They're standing for our country, for our culture. So that's why that song to me, really mattered, because you're suddenly seeing him like a couple of songs later, sort of puking in public, and, it didn't really matter what he was doing in Sadda Haq. He just latched on to the first movement he saw. And I think that was a great play on, the entire artist lifestyle.
But why do you think men liked it so much more? Because it's somehow connected with, sort of this angsty artist, and women just had no patience with it, especially because the woman in the film was so, not fleshed out enough.
Yeah, it's simple, because men obviously find themselves in this film, whether they like to admit it or not. Because
it's a very romantic notion of yourself, right?
Notion of yourself. We like to escape into films to see what is the best possible version of ourselves. This is actually the worst possible version of ourselves most of the time, which we see on screen. I don't
But
think
it's very
the film-
seductive. It's
it is
very
seductive.
seductive.
I don't think the film glorifies it. Even I've noticed that a lot of female critics over time, the main problem they have with the film is that it sort of fetishizes the man-child syndrome, and it sort of puts a spotlight on the man who really doesn't deserve a happy ending, but he gets. But if you notice Rockstar, that there is no happy ending. He's the reason she dies in the end. She gets pregnant because of him, and this is also the problem I had with like with the Kabir Singh down the line, which became as divisive as Rockstar over time. The protagonist was rewarded in that film, but in this he's not. A good way to look at this film would be like as a flaw, like Jordan or Janardhan actually plays a flawed villain. He's not a flawed hero. And I think a lot of us, if we change our perspective of looking at the film that way, and a lot of men obviously relate to it because, as you said, it's a very romantic version of looking at the way we melt down in life. But I think it makes a lot more sense even with this film, with Tamasha, if you look at it in a way where you're not actually the filmmaker isn't rewarding his hero. It's a tragedy, and for me that kind of worked more than most other films in this genre.
Well, we've got Imtiaz on in a few minutes, so we can put all our questions to him. So Rahul, let's let him in.
Yeah.
Hey Imtiaz, welcome to FC Retake. You are the first guest we've ever had on this show, and we're thrilled that you could be with us.
Well, that's a really special honor. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So Rahul and I have been mulling over Rockstar and kind of arguing and, talking about what we thought of it back in the day in 2011 when the film released, what we think of it now. What really struck me when I saw the film again for this conversation was just how brilliant Ranbir Kapoor is. And we're going to ask you lots of readers' questions, viewers' questions, but I want to ask you first, like, what was your brief to him? He is a terrific actor, but was there anything specific you said to him about how to become JJ?
We spent a lot of time together, I think. We did a lot of doing nothing kind of time as well. He used to come with me for recce's in Delhi when I used to go and talk to various people to get their locations, etc. He'd be around. We'd try to take binges into the lives of Janardhan Jakhar by going into those kind of permit rooms and dhabas where he would have gone to drink, etc. Just also I introduced him to a lot of slightly nefarious people like Janardhan Jakhar gone wrong kind of thing, just to understand what the sensibility of the brain is. Also, he used to come for music recordings. So we used to spend a lot of time talking and doing nothing, not direct instructions, but just trying to be in the world of Janardhan Jakhar.
And would you say he sort of co-created this character with you then?
Yes, of course. He sensed, there are a lot of body sensing things that actors can do, I feel, which Ranbir did very well, rather than just processing information intellectually. There's also just to be somebody, I guess, you just have to be in a situation where instructions are not passing, but some sort of a vibe of that world or that character is coming to you. So he was very, very sensitive about that. He co-created for sure because he's very silent. It's not as though he says things, but he absorbs things and processes them in a very different way. Then I used to also give him a lot of music, like heavy metal and rock music that he hadn't listened to earlier. So really just like introducing him to worlds that he didn't know about.
Well, he's just astounding. It's one of the finest.
It really hit me when, when you're shooting with Ranbir, typically you don't know whether he's doing well or badly in a shot. Because there's nothing that he does that is remarkable on the shot. This is the most brilliant thing about an actor, I feel. When Ranbir is acting, you don't know whether he's acting well. It doesn't really impress you because he's just there. He's just doing it. It looks just like water, organic, right? It hit me later when in Rahman sir's concert, I had gone and they were playing visuals from the film. So the Sadda Haq song was going on, and suddenly in between, they started on the screens playing the I'm getting goosebumps actually. They started playing the eco-friendly nature ke rakshak, that part, and just Ranbir's face came when the way he was saying it. I was like, man, what is this guy on?
Yeah.
What was going on over there? I didn't realize it when I was shooting it or editing it.
Yeah, no, he's terrific.
Imtiaz, my question obviously had
Yes, sir.
a lot to do with the talking point of Rockstar, even back when it released, which is basically the editing language of the film.
Yeah.
How pre-planned was the particular editing language? Because, almost half the film was a montage to music, to A R Rahman's music. And so how pre-planned was this, and how involved were you in Aarti Bajaj's sort of task?
So I think a good edit is written on the script. So this film was written in that way. Obviously, there was a lot of improvisation and rewriting when music happened. So when
Right.
music happened, I started writing it again to music. That in this part we do this. It's like a song breakdown kind of a thing, but an extended version of. So all of that was going on the written paper. So when the material came to Aarti, it already came in a certain shape. Of course, it completely transformed even after that. But the lead to the edit was given by the paper edit. Sorry, not the paper edit, but the script itself.
Yeah, because I think it's the finest piece of editing in Hindi cinema in the last 10 years. Like for me, it keeps
Wow, man,
going.
I'll tell that to Aarti. She'll be thrilled.
Yeah, big
And
fan of-
also, thank you for reintroducing all my films to Anupama. She uh, likes them when you reintroduce them, not when I introduce them.
And I have to tell you, Imtiaz, I for sure, with this one, I appreciated more things in it. I think when I first saw it, Imtiaz, I was so frustrated at the sort of lopsidedness between the man and the woman that I couldn't see the sort of all that you had accomplished. I could just see
No. Come on. And
the
I
flaw.
was just, I love it. You're very honest with me. I remember the time you interviewed me for Highway. And I didn't even know that you've not liked the film. And then you said, he's so gracious. He's talking so nicely, even though I didn't like the film. I said, didn't you like the film? So one day when he reintroduces Highway, you like it. No, I'm just joking.
So Imtiaz, I'm gonna take some of the questions we got.
Sorry. Yes.
Okay. So on Twitter, Mayur Ditwate says that after finishing the first draft of the movie, to whom did you narrate it first? Was it to the actor, actress, or the music composer? Who was your first?
There's a little story behind Rockstar. There was a time many years before I actually make it that I was trying to make it. At that time, there was no Ranbir Kapoor on the horizon. So I had narrated it to Rahman sir first, before Ranbir, before Nargis, before the producer, etc. That time, someone else was supposed to be producing it and acting in it, etc. Rahman sir, I'd narrated it too. So he had already composed some stuff at that point of time, which didn't come into the film exactly as it was, but it kind of set the tone at that time. Of course, the film didn't get made at that time.
When was that? How much before?
That was before Jab We Met. So that was around 2006.
Okay, here's another question from Twitter. N. Madhusudan asks, both Rockstar and Tamasha are extremely angry films. Both these films have a furious tonal power. Is this anger something personal that finds its way into the writing, or is it meticulously thought through and written? How attached are you to the script when you write?
Strangely, I seem to be very attached to these films. Although I think about it and I wonder where this angst that Jordan has comes from. My life is not like Janardhan Jakhar's at all. And I believe that I'm a much more articulate person than he is. But sometimes some feelings find their way into you and then through you into the work with an urgency and importance which you do not understand, which I don't understand. It seems to be organic coming from me. It's not impersonal. It's not meticulously planned cerebrally at all. It is emotional, but I don't know where this emotion comes from. In almost every film, definitely Rockstar, which I feel so emotionally connected with, but I have no reason why, because it's not like my life or my uh, emotion in life.
Imtiaz, are you able to revisit your films? You just said that it is a defective film. Are you able to look at the flaws yourself?
Oh yeah, especially while making them.
You know while you're making them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sounds strange, but you know, and sometimes you are faced with an inability to make it any better. And when the film goes, you know that there are certain things that could have been better. When you see it for the next time, then you see some other things that are not so perfect. And so it's there. I'm aware of them at that time, and later as well. I don't like revisit my films much, and when I do, and when I don't actually, then there's this larger thematic errors that come to me, like the defects in Rockstar, like the overall defect in Tamasha, etc.
Yeah, I have another question from Ahmad Abdul Mukid from Instagram. How did you collaborate with Anil Mehta to design the shots in the film? Because I think Rockstar is one of your most visually beautiful films.
So Anurag Kashyap, the film director and my friend, he had said that congratulations, Rockstar is your first feature film. You you've directed your first film. This is the beginning of your career, because he found also that um, the film had a visual language, etc., etc. Actually, just Anil Mehta is a very, very sensitive cinematographer. He reads the script, he read the script, and we spoke a lot with each other. And then he kind of, in him, germinated this idea of how to shoot it. And again, we collaborated very, very beautifully. He's one of the best people to work with in the industry. And but he drew the kind of darkness into his visuals from the music a lot, and from the script and the way things were happening a lot. He was also very inspired by what was going on, by the vibe of the film. And yes, he contributed a lot to the visual language, obviously, of the film.
You know, and that's one of the things that struck me was this whole idea of um, a place beyond right and wrong. You know, where people can be free, and I feel like uh, in your films, the lovers, that place is somehow represented by open roads. It's represented by the mountains, because eventually, at some point, all the lovers in all your films end up spending a little time in something, some variation of that, right? Even at the end of Love Ajkal 2, they're in the mountains. You think that they might have a chance at a happy relationship because they're surrounded by this really beautiful place. Why is this a recurring motive? I mean, this whole thing of ek jagah hai jahan, you know, there's no sahi or galat.
Firstly, you're making me hate lockdown even more, Anupama, by asking that question. I'm getting into it so nicely. Secondly, it's an acute observation, and I feel that yeah, a sense of some place, the serenity of some place which is far away, is just charming. I think is all that I can say about it.
So forever and forever, your lovers are going to be running away to mountains, Imtiaz.
That's because I can get there to shoot. It's all personal. It's an excuse.
That's right. That's right. I just want to be in the mountains. Where should they run? Oh, to Kashmir.
Why not? Yeah.
Just us reading a lot into it. It's just a filmmaker wanting to chill in the mountains, I think.
No, actually, to be honest, you get a certain feeling of serenity and a feeling of beyond. Wherever you get it is where you can place the scenes, right? Personally, me, I get it in a certain terrain, and I try. And whenever I think of that, I imagine that, and I find myself going into that kind of terrain. If I explore more and it becomes deserts, then so be it. I hope that that changes. Actually, it could be something else, a tropical paradise island. But at the moment, it seems to be going towards the hills.
Is there a personal favorite moment from this film for you, Imtiaz?
I feel when we started shooting the songs, this indescribable passion with which Jordan gets seized in the middle of Sadda Haq is something that I didn't know how to even explain to Ranbir actually. That what happens, why does he suddenly freak out? And when you said moment, I thought of the moment of actually doing that, the shooting, the time in the shooting, that was really strange. Because I said something, I don't even remember, music was playing, I was talking to him. Anil was saying, ready, 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 in order to just get me out and start shooting, And then I moved out and something he did. And when that whole thing, that frenzy got over the first time, I remember he was on the ground. And when the music cut, the unit started clapping. And the moment everyone started clapping, Ranbir, he kind of just like broke out of something, It's like as though, what the fuck, where am I? That kind of thing. And so that I remember a lot. And it was just like the beginning days of shooting. We were still trying to discover what it is.
Imtiaz, your cinema is a sort of cinema that's constantly being, it's polarizing, it's constantly being discussed,
Yeah.
it's being dissected. People, and it's interesting that the films, like Rahul and I, we started, the series actually started with a conversation about Tamasha. And then we had to tell ourselves, no, we have to stay away from Imtiaz films for a while. And then the first chance we could, we came back to Rockstar.
It's amazing you saying that.
So Imtiaz, have you made peace with the fact that you are a divisive filmmaker?
What I can say to that is the fact that when I go to a certain chef's table, I'd like to eat those dishes that the chef has already given me, which I've liked. That's the reason I've come there. And it's much like that the audience comes to watch a film of a certain filmmaker because they liked what you did. They, in a way, want the same thing. But being a professional also means knowing better. So the chef should know how he or she can improve my taste, The other reason is a little selfish, Anu, because really the reason for me to be here is for myself because I have fun and I have things to do in my life. Like I've got to discover things, and so I go in that, and sometimes I feel that I take too many steps and am unable to really articulate it well in the film. However, when confronted with the issue of giving the audience so-called what they like, which I don't know, but even if I have to think like that, I drift into what interests me and what I think is really cool and what will be interesting for the audience, therefore. I get caught in between, and I'm okay with that because I also cannot not fuel my own passion of filmmaking. There is that selfish streak that I have, and much as I would like every person to be completely impressed instantly with all my films, I know that now I know that perhaps is not going to be easy for me. But I do know that I can make my language simpler, like if I become better and better at my work, it'll be easier for people to follow my films.
Okay. And last question, Imtiaz, what are you working on right now? What's next?
Well, I have this lockdown has given an immense amount of time to write a lot of things and to conceptualize those things that were back around there and like pull them out. So I'm engaged with many ideas, 3 or 4 of them actually. There's one that I'm working on more than the others, but not saying much about that because let's see how it turns out. Yeah.
Nice. Imtiaz, thank you so much.
Hopefully it will be a film that everybody will like immediately on the day of release.
Absolutely. Listen, that's what we all hope for, and we look forward to it. Thank you, Imtiaz.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Pleasure talking. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.